Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
We'll call the meeting to order for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners on Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. Please note that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the Legislative Chamber alongside an automatic external defibrillator. Please stand for the pledge. First order of business is the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Kavanaugh is absent at the moment. Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers. Mr. Chair.
Here. First, we have items A and B. A being the approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. And B, a call for a meeting and set Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 as date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Rogers, second by Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll go into our resolutions, which are items C through F, resolution C through F. We can take them in block if the board desires. Second. Motion by Rogers, second by Morgan. Any discussion, questions on resolution C through F by board or public? If not, we'll vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the section labeled Appeal. We have item G, Appeal of Rejection of Homestead Exemption for Sharon Wallahan at 1027 South 90th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68114. And Mr. Goodwillie, you're going to open this one up for us?
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor, Register of Deeds Office. Let's start with this proposition. This relates to a homestead exemption application. And the most fundamental rule of homestead is that the person seeking the exemption both own and occupy the home. Got to live in it. This is an application we got for a property at 1027 South 90th Street. It's on the southeast corner of 90th and Pacific. Perhaps you've driven by there and noticed all the boarded up windows and the general disrepair of the house. When we got the application for this year, we noticed something kind of unusual. And that is that the mailing address of the applicant differed from the address of the property for which the exemption was sought. That happens in about 1% of the 14,000 homestead applications we get every year because you have to be an owner-occupant. So then we took a closer look at the property, took a bunch of pictures. They should be, I think they're either in your notebook or they're online along with a bench memo. You can see from the pictures that there are boarded up windows in general disrepair. It looks like the abandoned house that you sometimes see in neighborhoods. The city has been out, their parks department, and has cited the house several times for litter and vegetation violations. City code enforcement has been out with a list of violations. I think their citation letter is attached, and among the citations it talks about vacant properties need to be maintained in the same fashion as occupied ones. Additionally, there have been numerous police calls out over the years, and let me give you a little, and the reports on those are attached. Let me give you the flavor. On 1/1/23, Ms. Wallahan told the police that this was not her primary residence. The home is used for storage. There was another incident in 12/23 where she said she had been staying at a different address. The police noted that they could not make entry into one door and could not walk through the house to verify if anything had been taken because of the piles and stacks of items within. Another incident in '24, Ms. Wallahan told the reporting officers that she had been living with her dad at a different location. And so it's all kind of in there. And I guess the answer is Homestead is not free for nothing. The taxpayers subsidize it. And so our stance is because there is nobody living in the home in 2024, it does not qualify for homestead exemption. The taxpayers should not subsidize it, and therefore the appeal should be rejected.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwillie. We'll go to Commissioner Morgan.
Mr. Goodwillie,
Yes.
I know that home, I think it's on the northeast corner of 90.
I'm sorry, did I say southeast? I apologize. Yeah, the northeast corner.
Yeah, the Lum deal is on the southeast, and it is in pretty deplorable shape. Did she mention that she tries to stay there some, or did you hear anything?
It's hard to tell from the reports that we have, but mostly the reports will say, well, she showed up, she arrived there, she noticed some things were missing, and she called the police. So she may have said to somebody she stays there once in a while, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Did she get notice that we were going to be bringing it up today or anything?
I don't know. We sent a rejection letter out, and that rejection letter, which is part of your packet, gives her 30 days to file an appeal. And my understanding is she has filed an appeal, and Dan Esch's office put her on the agenda for today.
Dan Esch, Douglas County Clerk, to answer your question, yes, Ellen Sexer will send out a notice to somebody when something like this is going to be on the agenda, but it's via letter, and to be honest, I don't know if she responded to that letter or not. So.
And we don't think she's here. I mean,
we've met her before. This is not the first time we've had a homestead issue with her. For a while back in the 20-teens, she was applying on behalf of her father for a house on 123rd Street. Turned out Dad didn't live there and had lived in nursing homes for many years while she was representing that he did. And what I remember of meeting her is I don't see her in the crowd today.
okay, and I'd make the motion to support what the assessor has suggested.
Which would be to uphold the rejection.
Yes.
All right, second by Rogers, motion initially by Morgan. Discussion on that motion. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, thanks for the information. How many years has this homestead exemption, did you say this earlier? Has she received this historically for the last 5 years?
On this house, she has before, and I think what triggered our interest is that in previous applications, she listed the mailing address and the homestead address as the same. So when it changed to a different mailing address, I mean, normally you get the mail where you live, right? When it changed, that got us to go out and take a look at the property, and there were the boarded up windows and the grounds in disrepair, and I mean, I think the pictures are provided. If you want, I can put some up here, but you can kind of see the general disrepair of the place. Karen, could you turn that on, please?
So,
Turn it around, okay.
Mike,
This is pretty representative. Oops. Can we focus that a little bit? That's pretty representative. You can see the disrepair in the grounds. You can see the boarded up window. Here's the garage with the address up in the upper right-hand corner. Here's a glimpse at some side and back windows. If you can see that. This You know, as a side note, there often is a truck parked in the driveway. That's the neighbor's truck. They park it there so it looks like the place is occupied.
Okay, Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? If not, there's a motion on the table. We'll vote.
Mr. Chair, does this include adjournment?
It can. Motion or second? Good, good. All right. Yep, it does.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That concludes Board of Equalization. We'll jump into Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please. Oh. Oh. Larry, did you have an item on the appeal?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I have a number of reasons for opposing this. His opening statement on you have to be owned and occupied. I guess that's saying that a citizen that has paid property taxes till age 81 or after cannot maintain that home as a rental property to help subsidize his stay at a early retirement center or whatever, and in hopes of passing that property on to his family, even though there's an inheritance tax to maybe discourage that. That seems to me like that is probably unconstitutional, and that rule needs to get changed. As with any law, it needs to be reasonable. That is not necessarily reasonable when you apply it across the board. Another reason is the code violations. You people come along and adopt international codes on this and international codes on that senior citizens may not be able to keep up on year after year. So it seems that the plan is the city can go out and inspect a property and declare it unusable because of code violations. And then pretty soon you have a community discussion about blighted property. Then pretty soon the whole block area is deteriorated. You go in and declare the property values next to nothing. A developer develops and gets a break. At the top of Hamilton Street, about 42nd Street in the Walnut Hill district, there is an apartment building, and a whole block there between east of Saddle Creek, between Hamilton and Lafayette. In fact, I think this is on Lafayette, about 43rd, 44th, has been abandoned for quite some time, probably by homeless people that broke into it and has destroyed the property, and people are now dumping their trash there. The city has done nothing except post a sign a long time ago and done nothing with it. I don't know if that's on the city's property tax rules now or not. And maybe the city owns it. Maybe the city land bank bought it. You people need to do something about it. If you're going to do it to her or refuse me, even we're on homestead, then you ought to need to do it to yourselves and to the city. So please go clean that up. And while you're at it, the area around the Mega Saver on Hamilton and Saddle Creek needs to be cleaned up too. Another reason is almost 1 year ago today, I was excoriated for protesting property tax exemption for an Islamic center. I'd like to resubmit another document.
Larry, that's off topic. We're on 1027 South 90th Street.
Just a quick point under my constitutional right.
Anything else on 1027 South 90th Street, Larry?
Yeah, okay. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Tax exemptions for Islamic organizations.
That's not the topic at
is
the moment, Larry.
unconstitutional, Roger.
That's not the topic at the moment, Larry. Thank you. We'll move on to Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, Commissioner Friend, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Mr. Chair.
Here. First item of business are the minutes and claims in Section 1A, being the approval of minutes of Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, and B, the approval of claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Rogers, second by Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to consent agenda. Before we motion for discussion, I think Mr. Clerk has an item to remove.
Yeah, Dan Esch, Douglas County Clerk. So item A, we're going to remove. This is a quarterly item my office does every quarter. And there's just nothing to report this quarter, so there's no action that needs to be taken. And then I just wanted to point out on item H, and updated documentation has been provided. The agenda says 2024, and it should say 2025.
Got it. Thank you. Do we want to approve with the removal of A? Motion by Rogers. Second by Friend. Discussion on consent agenda items? Yes. Commissioner Rogers?
Mr. Chair, I just want to comment on G, H, I, possibly L. Just want to note in the record and put it there for a basis of when we get around to, it's not too far a year from now, not knowing the ramifications of what the legislature would do, that, these items are items that, we haven't increased now, but just because of the state law change, these are in that realm that eventually they're not going to stay flat forever, and we have to increase. And these are some of the things that are not listed as exemptions that could put us under the squeeze. But also note the point for L as well, that it's one of these things that we're in agreement with the state with, that we administer at the local level. And just wondering and noting that seems like, since it's not public safety, it would be under that cap, even though it's the court administration. I don't recall court administration specifically being named in there as public safety. So I just want to put that on record.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on consent agenda? If not, we'll vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to our presentations. We have presentation A, overview of the November 5th presidential general election. I shall toss it to Commissioner Brian Cruz and company.
Good morning. Brian Cruz, Douglas County Election Commissioner, 12220 West Center Road. And I have with me my deputy over here, Chris Carithers, which I think most of you know both of us by now. So we just wanted to give you a little update and see if there were any questions on the upcoming November election. Let me get the, okay. So obviously most of you know, for the public, we're at 120th and Center in the Bel Air Plaza. We've been there 5 years now. So in-person early voting starts on Monday at our location, this location. If you like to vote in-person early, we always encourage you to do so earlier rather than later. The longer you wait, the longer the lines get. Our website, it's votedouglascounty.com. There's a lot of useful information here, but probably the most useful piece of information on our website this election will be right there, the Find Your Voting Information. If you put a little bit of information in there, it will take you to a PDF, the exact ballot, the exact candidates and issues that that individual we'll be voting on. This is an unprecedented ballot in Douglas County. We have president, 2 senators for the first time in many, many years, because we have a 2-year term senator and a 6-year term senator because of the way Mr. Sass, our former senator, resigned. And then that was an appointed senator. And so now both senators are up this time, Senate positions, one for 2-year term and one for a 6-year term. Congress, then we have many other what we call down ballot issues. Some of you are on the ballot, OPPD boards, natural resource districts. There will be judges on there to retain judges. And then there will be 6 issues from the state of Nebraska, referendums and issues. And then if you live in the city of Omaha, you will have an additional 9 issues to vote on. 2 city charter amendments, 6 city bond issues, and a good life economic district. So if you live in the city of Omaha, which I think we heard last week, it's like 80% of the residents in Douglas County now are in the city of Omaha, you'll have 15 issues to vote on. It's a 2-page ballot front and back, and the second page of your ballot will be literally nothing but issues, both front and back. So the name of the game here is just to be an informed voter. If you like to vote by mail, you can sit at your kitchen table and do it, but if you're heading to your polling place, be sure and study those ahead of time so you know what you're up against. So we have about 362,000 registered voters in Douglas County as of September 25th. I'm expecting 365, 367 by the time voter registration closes on October 25th. So we have 5 parties now in the state of Nebraska. We've got Democrat and Republican, which everybody knows, but we also have Libertarian, legal marijuana now, and a no labels party, in addition to nonpartisans. And of course, nonpartisans are about 25% of all registered voters now. They don't want to be affiliated with any party. Sometimes they're called independent. In Nebraska, the official term's nonpartisan. So the general election on November 5th, we'll have 3,000 election workers strong across the county, across our 207 polling places, physical buildings. So approximately 2,400 of those will be poll workers. On election day, we will have at almost all locations 10 poll workers. So we have doubled the number of poll workers for this election because we know the turnout will be greater. We just want to keep things moving and be able for voters to have the best possible experience they can. Speaking of poll workers, there is a story today, National Public Radio. There was a Nebraska reporter that came and interviewed myself and my poll worker coordinator last week. And the article is on NPR Nebraska this morning, but it's also on their national site. And it also went out in Election Line, it's called. It's our national organization literature that goes out every day to all the election officials across the nation. And it's about how we draft poll workers here. And about how, you know, the average age of our poll worker is in the low to mid 50s. As opposed to the nation. One of the other big advantages is folks that do this, they get to learn about the process. And they're amazed by what goes in it. And we hear over and over again, they're amazed at how much work goes into it and how secure and safe our elections are. So if you get a chance, you may just look at that. It's kind of a fun article for us this morning. So there's basically 3 options in Nebraska and in Douglas County. So if you like to vote by mail, you have to request a ballot. You can do that up until October 25th at 6 p.m. The easiest way to do that is if you got one of our green postcards, to use that and return it. If you didn't, you can go to our website, votedouglascounty.com, go under the envelope icon, and print the form off there. and fill that out. There's a variety of ways you can return it. There are outside organizations, which is permitted, that are sending early voting apps out. There's one Center for Voter Integrity, I think it is. There's also another one we've discovered in the last couple days out of Texas. The unfortunate part about these organizations is we have tried to work with them to make sure that data is clean and good and they're not duplicating and sending duplicates to voters and causing voter confusion. Unfortunately, that hasn't been real successful. They haven't been real cooperative with us. It appears as though from the calls we're getting, this one out of Texas now, somehow they got names on wrong addresses. So we're getting those calls now. So if you get a third-party request for an EV ballot, you can certainly use that. But again, the safest and simplest way is just use our green card or go to our website. If you have a question, please call our office at 444-VOTE. We're happy to help you kind of figure that out. In-person voting starts October 7th at our office. Normal business hours are 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. We will be closed to the public for Columbus Day. But we will be open the 2 Saturdays prior to the election as a convenience to voters from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then, of course, if you like to vote at your polling place, you can head out on Election Day. Those are open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 207 physical locations across the county. Again, just make sure you know where you're going before you head out the door, and you can find that again at the Find Your Voting Information. So in Douglas County now, we're about 50% polling place and 50% early voting in Douglas County. And voters should vote in whichever way they're comfortable with. So again, early voting ballots, you gotta sign the back of your envelope. You have to sign this in order for it to be counted. If you don't, and we have a way to contact you, the voter, we will either email you or we will call you and attempt to let you know that. You do not have to fill out a new ballot. You can simply come to our office, sign your envelope, and you just need to do that during our office hours before 8 p.m. on election night. So again, we'll reach out to you if we have the ability to do that. Drop boxes. We've got 13 drop boxes around the county. Drop boxes are safe, they're secure, our voters have embraced them. 77% of all early voting ballots are now returned via one of our drop boxes. Our drop boxes are under 24/7 camera surveillance. The slot is very narrow, so you can only put about 1 or 2 items in there at a time. They're open 24/7. A couple of them, some of them are drive-up, so we have concrete bollards around them. And this year, in the highly, highly unlikely event, but we have added dry fire suppression systems to all of those this year in the event a bad actor would attempt to do something. But again, the slot is so small that would be highly unlikely. It's just another level of security for our voters. You can see the map. We've got them where the major population is scattered throughout the city. We have one right outside here at the city county building. So voter ID, that was new in May. And so this will be the first big election with November. So it was on the ballot in November of 2022. It was passed by Nebraskans. The legislature created the rules and regulations last year, LB 514. I'm the co-chair of our election law committee for NACO here, so I was heavily involved in helping to craft that piece of legislation. And then the first election it was used in was May. We had over 95,000 voters, and we only had 11 individuals that needed to use a special provisional ballot that didn't have the proper ID. So we thought that was wildly successful. What that tells us is, you know, even if Nebraskans don't always agree with laws, they comply with them because we're Nebraskans. So the easiest and most convenient way is use your Nebraska driver's license or state ID. It can be expired, and it does not have to have your current address. The law says it just needs a photo of you and your name. So if you like to vote early, you fulfill that piece on your early voting application. So the easiest way is to write that number on your early voting application. If you go to the polling place, the easiest way is to bring it with you. Now there's a whole host of other IDs that are acceptable. Here's some of them: passport, military, tribal ID, hospital or assisted living facility or nursing home record. A lot of times those are referred to as like a face sheet if you're in one of those facilities. You can use a political subdivision ID. So if you work at UNMC or for the county or for the city, a college or university ID. What's not accepted are things that don't have your photo on them or aren't issued by a political subdivision. So again, birth certificate, Medicare card, Social Security card. We don't accept out-of-state driver's license. Private high school IDs we can accept because they're not a political subdivision. So Creighton Prep, the Lutheran High School. Out-of-state college IDs are not accepted. Also, yeah, we understand Costco and Sam's. Everybody has one. It's got your photo on it. It's got your name on it, but it's a private entity, so we can't accept that. If you have an issue getting an ID, you can get a free ID from the DMV for the purposes of voting. You can get a free state ID. But we always encourage voters to contact the DMV before you head over there, because you may need documents to get that free ID in order to vote. Now, if you already have a driver's license, don't go get an ID. It's one or the other. You don't need a state ID to vote. You just need one or the other. So if you forgot your ID, again, if you forgot your ID when you mail in your request, we'll attempt to contact you if we have a way so we can get that corrected. If you show up at the polling place and forgot your ID, there's two options. The simplest and easiest way would be to go retrieve it if you have the ability to do that and come back. If you don't have the ability to do that, you can fill out a provisional ballot, and then you have until 7 days, the following Tuesday, to bring the ID into our office and show us, and then your provisional ballot will be accepted. And again, we will be open that Saturday following the election from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. as a convenience to voters who may need that option. So we'll just talk about election integrity a little bit, and then we'll wrap up here. So again, I've kind of gone over some of this in the past, but our building has physical, security. It's a brick building. We have a security system, obviously. There are cameras inside and out. We've got 39 cameras at our location, and then the 13 cameras on the drop boxes. So we have 52 cameras that are monitored now, just for the election commission alone. We've got windows into the counting room right behind the front counter there, where folks can see the counting machines and the printing of the ballots. We have controlled access, the swipe cards to get in where ballots are, like the counting room and the vault. It's double authentication with a PIN pad. And then inside the vault, we have different safes for different military grade thumb drives, that blank ones and ones we use for the results and things of that nature. And on election day, the Douglas County Sheriff's Department is a extremely valuable partner of ours. They always place deputies at our office during the day, and then they do all of our traffic control in the evening for us at 8 o'clock when ballots are coming back. So just really thank the Sheriff's Department. We really couldn't do it without them. We've worked with them for many years now, and it's a really smooth process that works that evening. So by mail integrity, there's been a lot of talk, I know, about by mail ballots. over the last few years. By mail voting in Douglas County in Nebraska is safe, it's secure, and it's accurate and it's fair. You must request a ballot each time. We check the signature and now the voter ID component on that. Every day, once ballots start to come back, we go and pick up ballots every day from our drop boxes. They're all placed by people of 2 different parties. They're placed in each of their own containers with the seal on them. We bring them back. We scan them in per drop box, so we know where every ballot came from, either the post office or which drop box. And then that day, we go through, we scan those in first and get a count. Then we go through and verify signatures and other components. Then at the end of the day, we compare those. We basically, well, not basically, we do an audit at the end of every day of the early voting ballots to make sure everything's accounted for that day. And we do not go home until our audit is a 0 report at the end of the day. And then, of course, they're stored securely in our vault until Election Day and counting begins. Tabulating machines. We use election systems and software. They're right here in Omaha, Nebraska. The company started in the 70s. We were their first partner, first client. Maureen, your dad, was instrumental in that back in the days when he was election commissioner. And we've been a client of theirs ever since. Nearly 50% of all ballots will be counted on some type of ES&S machine in this election. ES&S is a reputable company. They do a wonderful job, and I think it speaks for themselves. They're by far the largest supplier of vote tabulating machines across the country. So we do tests before the election. Our machines are never hooked to the internet or each other. They don't have modems in them. We could do it even if we wanted to. They're operated by a bipartisan team. There's cameras in there. We have 3 permanent staff members who are overseeing it. Our elections manager's in there. Chris and I are in and out throughout the day as other duties, allow us to be. Once the results come from the machines, we have 9 machines. We'll take the 9 separate thumb drives and then we put them in what we call an air gap computer. So then all of those thumb drives are on a computer that's never hooked to the internet either. We bring all the results from the 9 thumb drives to that computer. Then we burn the results on an external CD, like CDs we used to listen to in our cars and at homes. And then we take that CD and we put it in a different external hard drive on another computer where we send it to the outside world so folks can get the results. The reports on our website are in a PDF format. They're not pretty, they're not charts and graphs. They're a little crude in a way. I'm not saying PDFs can't be changed or hacked, but it's a little bit harder to do that than changing a chart or a graph. So additional measures, we print our own ballots in-house. Not only is that an additional security measure because ballots never leave our possession until they're mailed out or go to the polling place, ES&S will tell you, we're not their best customer in terms of revenue. We've saved the taxpayers of Douglas County millions over the years by doing that. So we have an extensive canvass or an audit process afterwards. And then the Secretary of State's office administers a random hand count. So they will tell us after the election, go get the ballots from Ward 7, Precinct 23, and hand tally, the presidential race. So we'll go to the vault, physically pull those ballots, come back, sit down, and we'll hand tally those ballots in which we make sure that the results from that match up to what the machines had tabulated. We have had in the past observers. Observers are permitted for that process. We have had observers in the past for that. As you can imagine, it's not real exciting, but we have had some observers for that. So It's 8 o'clock on election night. Everybody wants to know who won, who won, who won. Did I win? If you're a candidate, did I win? So we release results right away at 8 o'clock. The reason we can do that is because state law allows us to count all early voting ballots on Monday, which we do. So all of these that are turned in by noon on Monday to a drop box or in our office, we will count on the Monday before the election. We don't look at the results. We don't use the air gap computer to bring them together. We simply pull the results off the machines, put them in the safes in our vault. We do that Tuesday evening. So right away at 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening, we get the first results, which is your early voting ballots. That's nearly 50% now, remember. So if you're an early voter, your voice is going to be the first one heard on election night. 8:45, we release results from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. voting on election day. And then 9:45 begins the 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. From election day voting. 10:45, I'm sure we'll have an 11:45 this time. I hope we're headed out the door by 12:45, but we'll stay as long as we need to get the job done. So I just want to reiterate here that there are always some ballots counted after election day. We do not find ballots. We do not find ballots in closets and car trunks. All ballots are accounted for on election evening, but some ballots are always counted on the Friday after election. Those are early voting ballots that are turned in Monday afternoon through Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock. The reason that is because on election day, all of our workstations and all of our people are supporting election day. And so all of our resources are focused on election day, and it's part of the election integrity process. So Wednesday and Thursday, we have to verify signatures, and we have to do the other election integrity things. And then we have to open them, and we count those on Friday. And then the second Friday after election, that's when provisionals are counted. So election results are always unofficial until we canvass or we certify the election and count all the ballots so everybody's voice is heard. And that will happen on the third Thursday after the election in Douglas County. So just some quick important dates. Friday, October 25th is going to be the most important date of this election besides Election Day. 6 p.m. on the 25th is the last day to request a ballot be mailed to you. It's the very last day to register to vote in person at our office. You can see our extended hours for early voting. We have some evening hours. I mentioned the 2 Saturdays. So Election Day is Tuesday, November 2024. I wish everybody a happy and safe Election Day. And with that, if there's any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Election Commissioner Cruz. Much appreciated. We'll jump into some discussion here, starting with Commissioner Cavanaugh.
Thank you. Thank you for this, Brian. And I want to commend you and Chris and the excellent staff at the Douglas County Election Commissioner's Office. You do a great job, and we're proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
The big question is, are our elections fair, accurate, and transparent?
Absolutely. Our elections are safe, secure, they're accurate, and they're fair. Douglas County and Nebraskans should be assured and reassured of that.
Now, you're a Republican.
That's what they tell me.
Your deputy's a Democrat.
Correct.
Democrats and Republicans on this board. I think we all share that view. And allegations of election impropriety have no place here in Douglas County, Nebraska. Is that right?
I believe that is correct. And you know, we're always, we're always welcome to look at credible allegations or threats, but you have to have evidence to do that. And we're not an investigative body. You can start with us, but it'd be the sheriff and ultimately the county attorney's office. And since I've been here since 2016, there's never been anything that's brought forth that's produced any of that.
Right. So I've been involved in elections for some time, and since 1974, I believe I've handled more recounts of elections than any other lawyer in Nebraska. And none of those have resulted in any allegations of impropriety. These are state and local elections. I'm not aware during that 50-year period where I've been actively involved of any cases even being filed, criminal violations, election fraud violations, much less verdicts of guilty found, not one, in that 50 years. Are you aware of any?
I am not, especially since I've been here and even, going back before that, I am not.
So, as you indicated, this year we have a new component, which is ID. And half of the people are going to vote by mail, half of the people are going to show up. So when I show up and I pull out my driver's license, I show up in person.
Yep.
I'm going to be required to show some ID.
Correct.
Okay. The driver's license that a lot of people have, if it's expired, is that still a valid ID?
Yes, it can be expired. And, poll workers are instructed in their training to look for a reasonable comparison. We understand people change their hair color, the glasses, illness, weight gain, weight loss, all of those types of things.
Now, an important question always, and you may have touched on this, but I don't recall it, is what do you estimate the voter turnout in Nebraska is going to be?
Sure. So in Douglas County, and we're pretty close to what the state does, we were 74.6 or 74.8 in the last presidential, so almost 75. The numbers, I think, are indicating we'll definitely be over 70%. I'm thinking 73% right in there. But of course, we're always prepared for a bigger turnout, and we always challenge the voters to prove us wrong.
10 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We'll jump to Commissioner Boyle.
Oh, thank you so much for that presentation. I do know that, as you alluded to, my dad was election commissioner back in the 1970s, and I remember as a kid going to the election office near and during election time, and it sounds very strange, but election day was like New Year's Eve in my house.
Yeah.
It's really nerdy, I know. But what I also admired was during COVID, I know you and my dad would meet, you would call it cop style, you would meet
Yep.
for lunch in your cars and
right.
talk back and forth to each other about things, about election items and how to make sure that the process had a lot of integrity to it. And I always respected that about you. And it's always funny because, again, you're a Republican and, we're Democrats and hardcore Democrats. But what it also ingrained in me, even as a kid, as an adult, is it's good that you can have be in different political parties and still have just basic integrity and want to do the right thing. And my dad was like that, and Brian, I will say that you are like that too. So I respect you for that, and I have no doubt your integrity is unquestionable when it comes to election integrity, and I want to make sure that you know that.
Thank you. That means a lot, Maureen. Thank you.
So, and then just now I have some practical questions, of course. When a ballot arrives to your office, can you go through the process? How is it verified? And also, what is done to make sure that your election workers, your temporary election workers, for example, have the same integrity and standards that you have?
Sure. So first of all, we do, for this election, we'll hire about 150 full-time and part-time temps to help, process all the early voting requests and by mail ballots. They're hired through the county. We do use a temporary agency when necessary to fill in. But either way, they go through a background check and a drug test. And so that's the first level. Obviously, we have cameras everywhere in there. We have supervisors. And if you've been to our office, we have a big open office area, where we're constantly monitoring things. So when ballots come back, the verification process is, we look to see, does the signature match? And for many voters, we have multiple signatures on file to compare to. One, we have agency sharing with DMV. When you request a ballot, we'll capture that signature and put it on your file. So we have different signatures because we know folks' signatures change over time. And then, we're verifying again that the right envelope, the right ballot number, the correct address, and all of that matches. And then once all of that matches, then we have previously scanned the barcodes. So we have a preliminary count of how many ballots we got in that day. And so once the verification process is done, then we'll take the number from the verification process and the number from the scanning in of the mail and the drop boxes and marry those up. So if we had 500 in the morning, we have to have 500 in the afternoon. Sometimes something gets scanned twice. I mean, there's humans doing this. And honestly, errors that there have been from humans, not machines. And we're not perfect, but that's why we have checks and balances so that we can make it right.
One other quick one. So there's no picture, of course. I wrote down my driver's license. How do you verify it?
Right.
On a mail-in ballot?
So the law says you present your ID. And so the method of presentation is you write down your state ID or your driver's license number, and then we have agency sharing with DMV. So then we access the DMV website to make sure that what you wrote down is indeed you on the ballot request. And then, of course, if you use a different form of ID, you actually send a photocopy in. Like if you use a passport, then you would send a photocopy in.
That's it. Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, thanks for the information. You and I have discussed this a little bit in the past, and don't mean to put you on the spot necessarily, but I think it would be valuable. You and I have talked about physical infrastructure and physical redundancy. So if there's a there's a 3-day power outage.
Yes,
right?
which we had.
Let's say there was a 3-day power outage from November 3rd to November 5th. ESS machines operate on electric current.
Correct.
Give me kind of an update. I know you don't call me every day, but give me a little bit of an update as to how some of those strategies have been, reconciled.
Sure. So if you go back to the 2020 election, if you recall, the Friday before the presidential general election, as it turned out, we actually had a squirrel that got in a power line and took our power down. We had like 700 people waiting in line to get an early voting ballot. So we were essentially crippled. So after that, we had some plans in place. We increased those plans. This summer, we had the big storm that went through in July. I think it was July 31st.
It's about 5 of them, Brian.
Well, yeah, that's right. The one we lost power on. So we were down for about a day and a half, and we were doing petitions during that time, verifying signatures on petitions. So we had to be back up. So as a result of that, OPPD has worked with us, and they've been great partners. I've got a rep from them. I was talking to her constantly during both of these issues. I mean, they're doing everything they can, quite frankly. They've been wonderful partners. But to bring us up to speed now, so I decided that we've had this happen twice. Perhaps it was time to look at the possibility of a generator as backup power for the Election Commission. So in working with Public Properties, with Jeff McGill, and we have now they have helped Hiller Electric, who did some work on our building. We're not going to get a generator. That was just cost prohibitive. But what they are going to do is they're going to wire a panel, essentially put a panel on the outside of the building, and then they will connect that panel to our fuse boxes, circuit breakers inside. In the event we have a power loss, the way I understand it, public properties may be able to clarify more, but the way I understand it is, then there's a couple different companies that the county has on standby they can get generators from, Nebraska Machinery and maybe another company. And then public properties would help us get the generator. They could hook this up to the outside panel and we'd be powered up and going. And then I believe they also have a contract with Sap Brothers because you have to have fuel to run these generators. But that, would all be done in conjunction with public property. So it's a valuable tool. We need it. We've lost power twice now. And, we've tempted fate twice. Let's not do it a third time.
Okay, thanks for the update.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyle?
And then just one more thing too. How do you, just from a candidate's point of view, how do you ensure that the ballots are fair for candidates or for the ballot initiatives? How do you make sure that the information, people have equal access and the candidates feel like they're on the ballot fairly? As we know, some people will just vote for the top one, or like even with the ballot initiatives, are they ever rotated around?
Right. So that's all dictated pretty much by state statute, the order of the ballot. And there's also recommended layouts to some degree from the Secretary of State's office, but a lot of it's in statute. So you start with your federal offices, of course, and then offices under that, again, are dictated. City issues go before state issues. State issues are last. So state issues, if you're in the city of Omaha, will be on the back page of your 2-page ballot. Front side will be city issues. So partisan candidates, so president, senators, Congress, that is also in statute. It's the party that won the governorship in the last state election will be on top. So partisan ballots do not rotate, but nonpartisan do. So nonpartisans rotate. So if there's 3 candidates, every third warden split will rotate. And of course, we have all kinds of checks and balances to do that. We do all kinds of test stacks with myself, my deputy, and our temp employees. We look these over and make sure they're rotating properly, and things of that nature. So that's essentially how it happens. We call it the ballot layout. That's how the ballot layout happens.
I see. And then again, can you just go over, I didn't read that state statute, didn't know it existed. Can you kind of go over what the general order is?
Yes. So the general order will be federal offices. So president, 2 senators, Congress. And then after that, we have county offices. And then after that, it's metropolitan community colleges. And then other offices, OPPD, NRDs, they'll kind of fall in place there. And then you have your judges, where you vote to retain a judge, yes or no. And then you go into your city, city issues, and then your statewide issues.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Other comments or questions, including from the public?
Okay, well, I'd just like to thank the board for their support on behalf of my deputy, Chris, and everybody at the election office and the 3,000 vote election workers across Douglas County. Thank you for your support. It means a lot to us, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner
And
Cruz.
happy Election Day.
Appreciate it. We'll take comments, questions. Larry?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm here today to protest the presentation by our election commissioner. I want to tell you that I'm speaking not only for myself, but what I consider as we the people of the United States. We no longer trust our government. And we would like to think that we can indict our government as per the Declaration of Independence, that when that government no longer is sufficient to do what it was designed to do, it is our right and our duty to alter, replace, change, legally, of course, through intentions of amendments, etc. But there is enough, I would say, without a doubt, a preponderance of American citizens that think there is something wrong with that last election and previous elections. And we cannot get the people that we have elected to talk about it, to answer our questions. In fact, in the state of Nebraska, all the way down from the Secretary of State to the election worker, everybody's mum about it. There are a number of people that have been refused open records information and other means, answers to questions that if we were allowed to have our presentation like he did, we could pick apart a lot of things that he said. Any reasonable lawyer could pick apart a lot of things that he said by simply questioning the absolute truth. We do not have to accept his word or your word as the absolute truth. You can be wrong. He can be wrong. He may be a victim of an invalid Secretary of State who covers everything up. Now, please go listen to the national experts, starting maybe with Mike Lindell, the local experts who does have standing, Mr. Robert J. Bohr. We the people nationwide have enough evidence to say you need to listen to us. And I have requested and been refused a number of times an opportunity for us to have a presentation where we can do the talking and you can do the listening and we can do the questioning and you can do the answering. But no, you've rejected many times. And it's time before this election to let the people have a full presentation as you did he and many community partners. Because you work for us, we don't work for you. You listen to us, we listen to you, but we do not have to accept it. And we do not. Therefore, we would like to use that presentation to indict all of you under the Declaration of Independence. What that means is those that have been covering things up could very well be guilty of sedition, treason, whatever, under the Constitution. This is not a national election here. This is a statewide election. So his national partners should not be a part of the game here in Nebraska. I don't care what all the other states do, or the federal officials do, or the parties do, okay? We the people want this, demand it, and we deserve it because you work for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. We've heard from the experts, the people that we trust, and the people that are appointed, Democrats and Republicans, to count the votes, that this is a fair, transparent, and reliable system that we have that results in an accurate vote count. That's what we need. Voting is the air supply of our democracy, and the folks that you just heard from the Election Commissioner's Office, Mr. Cruz and Mr. Carruthers, do an excellent job with their staffs of getting us a fair and honest vote, backed up by thousands of people, regular citizens who man our polling places, the United States Postal Service, which delivers our mail, and I think that what we have here is a fair, open, and transparent election process. In 2020, the challenges to this were all thrown out of court across the country. In 2020, President Biden received 81 million votes, more than any individual ever in the history of the Republic running for President of the United States. And Donald Trump received 74 million votes. So it wasn't a close election in 2020. There was no fraud in 2020. And based on what we've heard today, particularly in Omaha, Nebraska, Douglas County, we've actually stepped up surveillance. Now we require folks to present ID, as you heard. So this non-existent problem is going to become even less of a problem, although it never was really a problem. And the arguments against our fair and transparent voting system are going to become even more untrue than they are. What you just heard, I think, indicates the desperation of people who lost an election, a fair and open election. And that's too bad for them, but that's how our country's worked since its founding. It's working fine now, and we look forward to a fair and accurate count by these respected public servants in the next election. There has not been any fraud, there is not fraud, and there will not be fraud. We have a fair election system. The only thing that we need is for everybody to vote. And so the election commissioner's estimate of a 70% voter turnout is pretty good. It would be better if it was 100% voter turnout. That's the thing that we need. Everybody needs to vote. If you're an adult in the United States, you need to vote. And so I think that that's what we should concentrate on, get out to vote, and celebrate our fair, accurate, and honest election system. We're lucky to have it, and it's what makes America great. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Borgerson.
Thank you, Brian and Chris, for the presentation. And I really do hope that this fear-mongering and lies and dangerous rhetoric for our election workers stop right now as we're entering into this election cycle. It was absolutely deplorable what we heard and watched happen to our election workers across the country. And I can, I guess, keep repeating over and over that our elections were honest, fair, transparent, and you just heard from our election officials and the depths of things they go to make sure that that occurs. And so, again, I just hope that all of the stuff, I won't use the word I really want to use, stops, and that our election workers can do the job that they volunteered to step forward and do. And we thank them for that. And again, I thank you for the presentation, and our citizens can rest assured that we have a safe election. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Friend.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I did this a while back, probably 3 years ago, or probably 4 years ago, when Brian came up here and gave us maybe a post-mortem on the 2020 election. Think about this for a minute. You guys can look, yeah, anybody can look this up. In the history of this nation, right now, it's all soundbite. I mean, we can say, you know what, the 2020 election was stolen. Think about this for a minute. 1800, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, there was a battle, and election fraud was rampant. who won that election. The scholars still argue about that today. There's scholarship out there where people are essentially saying, in universities and think tanks all over the place, 1800 was a rigged election. 1824, John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson actually won the popular vote. John Quincy Adams became president. 1836, Martin Van Buren, Richard Johnson. 1872, Horace Greeley and Ulysses Grant. Arguments being made in newspapers about election fraud. 1888, Benjamin Harrison and Grover Cleveland. Arguments being made about election fraud nationwide. Nobody had Google. Nobody had the ability to actually affect a tremendous amount of public sentiment. 1960, John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. The media was all over it. Cook County. And 2000, Gore v. Bush. Do most of the people in this room remember that? 2000, Gore v. Bush, where they're hand counting ballots down in Dade County. Here's the point. None of this is new. None of it. Nothing that happened in 2020, despite the attitudes, I would argue, of both the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign, the attitudes of both, unprofessional on both sides, after 200 years of dealing with this stuff. The answer to the question is, when you find these type of problems, what do the jurisdictions that are in charge of elections do about it? What do they do? What we just heard from Brian Cruz and what we've heard from the state of Nebraska is you put pieces in place that assure voters that their votes are being counted in an appropriate manner, and you audit them. I would argue, here's a final point, I would argue that an election system software is more, when you pull that data off of there, is more accurate than a hand count. If you took 10 people in a room and you counted 5,000 ballots, 10,000 ballots, 20,000 ballots, and then you did the same thing and ran them through an ESS software, you would get an accurate count on the software. You'd get an inaccurate count on the hand counts. You know why Jefferson and Adams were mad at each other? Power. Power. That's all it is right now. What you do in each state as a reconciliation of problems that occur is the key. What we've done in Nebraska and what we're doing in Douglas County, I have a modicum of faith in. Are there inadequacies? Let's look at those inadequacies after the 2024 election. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to a 2-minute third round for Commissioner Boyle.
So, Brian, I have a couple quick questions. One is, how do you think the voter ID law will affect the number of voters? And also, if someone has a name change, an individual for whatever reason, divorce, marriage, or just changes their name, how does that affect, can that be verified appropriately, or will they be provisional ballots?
Sure. So from the turnout that we had in May, it was pretty on par with previous primary elections. And with what we're seeing now, I really don't think the voter ID is deterring virtually anybody from voting. It's pretty easy, and we've had a huge public relations campaign about it. Chris and I have been out, we're speaking all the time. We're going to an event after this. And we've had a media campaign from the Secretary of State's office, so that's all helped. So if you have changed your name, the best thing to do, the right thing to do is to change your voter registration if you've changed your name. But if you got married and you show up at the polling place and you were Maureen Boyle and now you're Maureen Boyle Smith, you simply sign Maureen Boyle Smith and you'll be allowed to go ahead and vote. And then
Doesn't have to match your ID.
It does not have to match identically. There's provisions for nicknames, like Robert and Bob, Suzanne and Susie, things of that nature. And then if poll workers have questions, they're always instructed to call our office and double check.
What if the name's completely different?
If the name is completely different, they should call our office, and that likely will be a provisional ballot, just to make sure. I will say this, in Douglas County, we have about an 83% acceptance rate of provisional ballots. So it's a little more time, but if you take the time to do it, you do it correctly, there's a really good shot, possibility that your provisional will count.
And if it's just the last name that changes, would it be provisional?
Probably not,
Okay.
no. Most likely not.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to another 2-minute third round for Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Brian, just a second.
You
You
betcha.
touch on an interesting category, these provisional ballots.
Yep.
Which are, I show up, something is unclear, but we'll take your ballot provisionally, and then we will check down the line to see if everything is straight. So just bear with me, but say I walked up to my polling place, and I get up there, and I don't have my billfold. I left it at home, so I don't have any ID. Can I vote provisionally and then provide my ID subsequently?
Yes, you can. So you vote a provisional, and then you have 7 days to come to our office and present your ID. You have to bring your ID yourself. You can't have your wife or a friend or any coworker or anybody bring it. You have to bring it yourself
Right.
and present it.
But even if you show up without your ID, you can cast a ballot, you just have to prove up later.
Right, and it needs to be a provisional ballot.
Okay. Now, when I mail in my thing, am I providing a copy of that same driver's license?
So we don't need an actual photocopy if you use a Nebraska driver's license or state ID. We just need the number because we have agency sharing with the Nebraska DMV and we can verify the information.
Very good. And of the percentage of ballots cast, if we had a pie graph of 100% of the ballots cast, how many of these provisionals come in? What kind of percentage?
So we will probably have somewhere in the neighborhood this time around of, I'm guessing here a little bit, but 275,000 people vote. This is our biggest election. So we will have between 5,000 and 6,000 provisionals, but you can do the math. The percentage there is extremely low.
Right. And so when you talked about the second Thursday after the election as being the kind of date of certification, that allows you to rectify all of these.
Exactly. That allows us to do research and rectify everything and make sure that everything is on par and tight and square.
Thank you.
Next time. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? Otherwise, thank you again. Chris and Brian, appreciate you. We'll move on in our agenda to section 5, public hearings. We have 3 total. The first one is item A, public hearing for Class 1 license for First Watch Restaurants at the address stated on the final agenda there on North 144th Street under management application of Christine Millsap. I will open the public hearing for item A on the agenda under section 5. Is there any comments or questions from board or public on item A? If not, I will now close the public hearing. What is the will of the board? Motion by Borgeson, second by Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Next, we have item B, a public hearing for Class C license for Hey J Coffee at the address listed on the final agenda on North 157th Street under management application of Dina Hannum. I shall now open the public hearing for item 5B. Is there any questions or comments from board or public on item B? If not, I will close the public hearing. What is the will of the board? Motion by Borgeson, second by Friend. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Next is item C under public hearings, which is in addition to premise license for Live Good Omaha LLC, DBA Symphony Point at the address listed on the final agenda on South 193rd Street in Elkhorn. I shall now open the public hearing for this item. Comments or questions on this item from public or board? If not, I will close the public hearing on item C. Motion by Borgerson, second by Rogers. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That takes us to section 6, committees. We have Finance Committee under A, budget report as presented. From there, we have the weekly personnel report from Civil Service also as presented. From Human Resources, we do have a need for executive session for labor negotiations. I believe that's it. Is that correct? Yes. All right. In that case, I'll take a motion. Motion by Rogers, second by Borgerson to go to exec session. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
The board shall now go into executive session for the purpose of labor negotiations, and we are still in room 903 upstairs. Thank you.
Motion to reconvene and adjourn outside of room 903 by Commissioner Morgan, second by Commissioner Friend. The motion passed 6-0. Commissioner Kavanaugh was absent. The meeting adjourned at 10:48 a.m.